Hey homies, what's up? Ryan Wynn here with another episode of Inking with the Inking. And in this episode, I am inking one of my own drawings of Hans Tanaka. Hans is the captain of the Runaway Horse, the captain and the ship in Alterna Comics' Scrimshaw. Scrimshaw is written by Eric Borden, drawn by Dave Mims, usually colored by Dave Mims, and lettered by Spike Alakta. So I say usually colored by Dave Mim, and that's because Spencer Desmond and I have hopped on to do colors for issue 3 and 4 of volume 2. Hopefully Dave likes it enough where he wants to bring us on for the third volume, because yes, they are planning a third volume, and that would be really, it'd be really fun to be part of that. Such a great book, such a great team. Eric's a super cool creator. He's a super fun guy. If you guys are Alterna fans but you haven't picked up Scrimshaw, then do yourself a favor and go spend the, $6 to get Volume 1. I don't know if they have them all in first print anymore. I know for sure some of them have gone to second and third print, which means Peter's probably totally out at Alterna headquarters. But this will be my first Alterna credit, and Spencer's first Alterna credit as well. Now, he and I both are writing books for Alterna, so it's kind of funny that our first credits with them are actually these, coloring Scrimshaw on these issues. But we're super stoked to be part of this crew, and we hope you guys like what we've done. So, about this piece, I'd been coloring the book all month and wanted to take my hand at drawing Hans Tanaka. I had this idea of him sort of standing battle ready, and I like the idea of, or I like playing with little ideas when you have characters with guns or knives or something where their hands are sort of in motion. So in this piece, he's got one hand, his left hand is gripping the top of the handle, and his right hand is just like he's locked his thumb in and he's about to wrap his fingers around it. So I kind of like doing little things like that. I think it brings a little bit of personality to the piece, and it gives it a sense of kind of movement almost, even though it's a static figure. Whenever I draw Ninjak, I always like to do a little thing where maybe he's kind of got a pinky slightly off the handle of his sword as he's jumping or holding it, things like that. And here we go. So a lot of people have trouble with hands. Here's what you do with hands. You find the artist who draws hands the way you like them, that looks cool. You set that up as some reference that you're looking at. Then you also get like a George Bridgman or some kind of really good anatomist artist, their book on how to draw hands, and you go through their step-by-step process. And as you kind of figure out how to place the knuckles and this or that, you can kind of start to incorporate the style that you want to lay over that. Now, also, you may not end up drawing like the person who you want to draw like. Maybe you're looking at some Jim Lee hands. You're like, I want to draw like Jim Lee, but then you end up drawing more like cartoony, say, like somebody like David LaFuente. You don't want to fight your own kind of style that comes through. But when you're learning, it's good to copy, but it's also really good to go to a source besides comic books for learning your anatomy and how to draw these things. Because it doesn't take that long. People I'm telling you, it doesn't take that long to figure out how to draw hands, feet, ears, and horses. You just got to sit down and just draw a bunch of them. Find a book by or a tutorial you like that shows you how to do it, and then just fill up pages in your sketchbook with ears and hands and eyes and feet. And I always say horses just because everyone's like, oh, horses are so hard to draw, but everything is just built up of basic shapes. So if you even look at something like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, that'll show you that all figures and objects are just broken down shapes that it's all rectangles and circles and ellipses and triangles, and every once in a while there's random abstract shapes to things when you're dealing with things like towels or curtains or bed sheets, things like that. Drapery, if you will. That's what it would be called in an art book or an art class. Not here out in the wilds of Ryan Wynn's YouTube. So you'll also see that I keep my hands centered in frame, regardless of if I'm using the brush or the brush marker like I'm using right now. It's pretty much always centered in frame, and that's because my elbow is locked to the table. Now, of course, it's not literally locked to the table, but it's locked in place on my drawing table, and I sit very comfortably. I sit upright for the most part. Sometimes I'll lean forward for when I'm looking in for certain details, but I try to keep my back straight, keep my chest really close to the desk, and keep the desk at a height where my arm rests comfortably on it. And I move like a printer. I lock my elbow down and I just move back and forth. And I use my left hand to rotate the paper and slide the paper into the proper place. But for the most part, I'll try not to raise my elbow off the table. Obviously, this is different for right at this moment where I'm using a T-square and a brush marker. But when I'm sitting and just doing the inking, you'll notice I just kind of move across the board in a pattern, and then I rotate it and I move across it again in another place. And then I'll kind of close in on details like I'm doing here on the sword handle and stuff like that. So, I recommend always using a T-square, especially when you're starting out, and if you're using markers and stuff. I don't necessarily use the T-square when I am inking with a nib and a ruler. I use some other tools for that we'll get into in some later videos. And so what I'm doing here, this is going to be a reverse silhouette, or just a silhouette, I guess, either way, of the runaway horse, which is Hans Tanaka's ship. And it's pretty badass. They hunt these genetically modified whales that were released into the ocean that are doing all sorts of damage. So you get this like because whaling's bad, but in the old stories, there's these cool stories of like old captains and things like that going whale hunting. So since these ones are a plight on the ocean, it's kind of cool that they go out and hunt them, and they have these giant harpoons and stuff. It's pretty gnarly. It's an extremely gnarly book. And for a mere $6, you can have the first 4 issues on newsprint. Volume 2's out right now, and the issues I'm coloring with Spencer Desmond are coming out on in a couple months. Issue 3, and then it'll be a couple months before issue 4. So we're coming up in the last minute of the video here, and I've said this in other videos, and I've done this in other videos. Do as I say, not as I do, all right? So normally you should fill in big black areas with a giant brush, not the size 2 that you're inking the figure with, like I did here. I was being lazy. I didn't want to have to wash 2 brushes. I already had 1 wet with ink, and I didn't want to have to wash 2 because I was only filling in this one black area, or this one large area with black. Where if I was working on multiple interior pages for a comic, I would definitely be using a lot more black and have that brush ready. But look at how much like scribbling. I'm just wasting time. Even in fast forward, it's scribble, 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 scribble. It should just be blop, mop down, bunch of black. So there we go. Take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and take it easy.